Hi everyone, Adam here. On election night in the United States, the opportunities to trade are going to be tremendous. In this video, we're going to talk about the minute-by-minute trade, when state polls are coming in, how to trade it in real time, and we're going to get you prepped up for that incredible event. November 8th, we will find out whether it's the first woman in the White House or if Donald Trump is going to make America great again. This webinar is all about trading around that, trading during the day, the headlines, how to be ready when the polls are coming in, and the minute-by-minute preparation that you need to trade on that event. If you go back to Brexit, and what we did there, we talked about when the polls were coming in, the different ridings, in this case the different states, and what they mean for the market, and how to get a bit of an edge with that, how to get a little bit ahead of the trade, and we're going to try to set that up again for the US election. So we've got a presentation here. First, let's have a look at the election map. This is just a quick look. Those blue states are going to be blue, very likely. The red ones will likely be for Trump. And the brown ones are the real ones to watch, at least for the most part. So we're going to come back to this in a little bit, that electoral college split. If you can see, this one shows that Clinton only needs one of those brown ones to win. She's sitting at 265 there. You need 270 of the electoral college votes to become president. And she's really on the cusp as it stands, unless some of these not even really that close ones like Pennsylvania or Michigan or Minnesota were to go to Trump. But essentially this is the key part of the election map. As we know, Donald Trump has some momentum going into the election, and that's such a key in the trade, in the lead up to it. Those jitters will be there, they will rise. I was just reading something about people, the polls and why they could be wrong. I mean, this still shows Hillary's still relatively comfortably ahead, over 2 percentage points, and the way the electoral college breaks down, it's even more favorable for her. But if you look at some of the polls, they might not be that good. For instance, one showed, I think it was something like 40% saying they were voting for Hillary Clinton in a certain demographic, voting for Hillary Clinton in phone polls, but you pull the same demographic online and it falls to 7%. So maybe a lot of people out there saying that they'll vote for Hillary, but on November 8th they will cast a ballot for Donald Trump. That gap though is narrowing and those jitters are rising, and anything is possible on November 8th. Quick look at the odds. So just the betting market odds. You have Clinton at 2 to 5. That's about 71%, and a Democratic Senate a little bit more likely than her winning. So that's 77%. Trump now up to 33%. He's been as low as around 10 or 12%. Clearly the shift is on and the momentum is his, 2 to 1. Republican Senate about the same odds, so we're still looking at 70-30 roughly. And the Senate is important. The House though is 95% likely to remain Republican, but the swing towards Democrats, if it happens, could be meaningful in the midterm elections, when it would be possible for Hillary, if she wins on November 8th, to take the House as well and have all three, and that in itself would be quite monumental and powerful. Let's look at the timeline, because that's what this webinar is all about, is what you're trading when. November 8th is election day, we know that. Polls open in the US around 6 or 7 a.m. Eastern. And there's one state of Vermont that opens at 5 a.m. Eastern, and then others don't open up until 8 or 9 or even noon Eastern, Hawaii, for instance. But those aren't really a factor. And the open isn't that important in and of itself. During the day, during that period when polls are open, expect the market to be a little bit quieter, but maybe not as quiet as you think. Watch for that talk of voter fraud. It's always there, so I tend to downplay it and not worry about it. It's never as widespread as it seems. This case, there may be more barking this time, but inevitably it proves to be small and insignificant. Of course, if that's not the case, it's not the case. But just because you hear talk about fraud doesn't mean that it's any worse than any other election. It's always there. One of the things you can see is a little bit of momentum in the final hours, especially as markets start to get a bit more comfortable with the status quo. That would probably favor Hillary in market moves, so it would be a risk-on move. But the rule of thumb is to fade it and to fade intraday moves. Really, the moves that happen in the time, about the 12 or 14 hours that polls are open, are very insignificant. They're low liquidity, and generally you want to fade them. The earliest indications after polls close will be on turnout. Again, be wary of anecdotal reports of high turnout. In every election, there's always this talk, turnout seems especially high this year, and then it's pretty much what we thought it would be. So beware of those anecdotal type reports. On more hard data type of reports, high turnout will tend to favor Clinton. Her supporters are less enthusiastic. Trump supporters are going to be there if it's a hurricane, if it's a snowstorm, no matter what. A lot of them will be at the polls, whereas generally Hillary Clinton's support is less enthusiastic, so they may stay home, and that will be a negative sign early. Also look for turnout statistics based on race. That's the best indicator of who is voting. Hispanics will vote very strongly for Clinton, blacks as well, and other immigrant groups, whereas white turnout will favor Trump. So that's one of the very earliest indications about which way the election is swinging. Watch the weather as well. That may have been a factor in Brexit. It's often a factor in elections. It's tough to parse weather in the United States because it's such a large country, but it could, if it were a swing state, Florida perhaps with bad weather, or one of the other ones that are close, Ohio for instance, you may want to keep an eye on weather there. But again, you're not going to see the market reaction, and I think it is a little bit of a gamble to bet on these early indications. But if they mesh up with the first exit polls and the first polls coming in, then you're really onto something. And on this sort of stuff, you need to act fast. The market will stay in some denial, but at 7 p.m. Eastern, that's midnight GMT, double check those times because clocks are changing here, but at 7 p.m. Eastern is the one to watch. Florida polls closing, that is a huge state. We'll go back to the map, but Trump really needs to win Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. Florida's out first. You'll be able to confirm whatever happens there by by New Hampshire, pardon me. That's also at 7 p.m. Eastern. So what is really important to remember about state polls is they correlate with each other very well. So if Trump is doing especially well in any state, it's likely he's going to do especially well throughout the country. So those first indications that come in are extremely powerful. For me, the first Florida polls, when they close, and the first early indications will be the biggest market move. And that's the trade, I believe, is trading that and holding your breath and hoping it holds up, because it probably will hold up, whatever it indicates there. And for Trump to win, it probably needs to be him by about 2 points in Florida. He can do it if it's more narrow than that, but if it's 2 points in Florida, I think you have a Trump trade going, and I think that you get on the Trump trade train and ride it. North Carolina, Ohio also needs to win those. What we'll find when we look more closely at the electoral map is that Trump has a very narrow path to victory, and he really has to run the table. But those three will give you the best indication. New Hampshire it's small in terms of electoral college, but it will tell you the trend at the same time. Later, as the polls come in, and if Trump looks like he is about to run the table, the last one that he needs to win will be Nevada, and that closes at 10 p.m. Eastern. So again, watch. That will be, if he's going to win, that would be probably the nail in the coffin. But the final polls do close at 11 p.m. Eastern. That's out in California, Oregon, Washington, on the U.S. West Coast. Those are Democratic. They don't matter. It's in the bag. They're not up for debate. So you may not see some networks wanting to call it until those first indications come in from there, but they are late to the game. And another trade on that is make the trade before the networks call it, and when the networks do call it, so CNN, ABC, whoever you want, when that starts to happen, fade it, get out of the trade, and then either try to get back in depending on what it is. But that's sort of the buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of trade, because by the time they call it, it should already be priced into the market. They're especially cautious since 2004, so it's old news by the time you see those headlines about such and such network calling it. So do not make a trade. Don't chase on that. Okay, so now again, a bit more on Trump. For him to win, he has to get all those close states, along with those ones we showed. The final ones to watch are Michigan, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. He needs one of those 5. And right now, that's why Clinton supporters feel like they're still sitting pretty. And that's why markets aren't super jittery in the run-up to the election, even with this latest momentum to Trump, because all 5 of those are polling pretty tough for Trump. State polls are scant, and it's not the best data. That is why it still seems like a long shot for him to win. Again, watch the margin of victory on those early states, and if he wins big in Florida, that will correlate very highly to what's happening in Colorado. Even though it doesn't seem like it should, the historical relationships and those intra-country, intra-state correlations are extremely high. Again, just a quick look at the map. You see how important Florida, North Carolina, Ohio are. That 18, 29, and 15 electoral college votes are huge. Utah, you could probably put that into red now. Looks like the third-party candidate is fading there, and Trump is comfortably in the lead. We want to watch Arizona, Nevada closely. I mean, this one shows Trump, Nevada blue, but the latest poll has Trump ahead there. And again, it's thin. It's not a populous state, and there's not a lot of great state polling in some of these places. So really rely on Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, those early indications, and New Hampshire, because I think you make that trade and you have to ride it out for the night and perhaps even longer. If Trump wins, a trade is risk aversion. We've seen it in the week before the election. The yen, Swiss franc, the euro are what you want to buy against the US dollar, or against the commodity currency, but especially those 3. The yen, classic safe haven. Same with the Swiss franc. You have to worry about intervention. My belief is that the Bank of Japan tends to, Ministry of Finance, will let it run down to say 95 or even 90 if it's a genuine risk event. They don't want to get in front of that because they believe that's a fundamental move, where if it's not connected to some kind of fundamental, they might check it at 95. I think they'll let it run all the way to 90 in this instance. So the Swiss may be a little more reluctant. Again, they only have so much firepower they want to spend. So I think the euro-dollar longs are a good trade. If that happens, an even better trade is short stocks. I think they're in big trouble. That's a lot of uncertainty, as that kind of get that lump in your throat when you think, wow, there's something unpredictable just happened and we don't know the future. There would be huge stock selling in the aftermath of the election. You'll see limit down in the U.S. on S&P 500 futures, but you sell any market, it will be correlated. Mexican peso is the classic trade. I think CAD is not more vulnerable, but it's underrated how vulnerable CAD could be. The Bank of Canada will cut rates in the near future, even probably regardless of the election results, but especially if we get some genuine uncertainty. I think there is time to get in on these trades. I think there is that state of denial, and the market. It may be obvious when if Florida goes big Trump, that he's going to win, but the market will stay in denial for 2 to 4 hours, even until maybe the networks call it at 11 p.m. So that is where you can make a lot of money if you're gutsy enough to step up and believe that Trump has won this thing and make these trades. One of the ones people talk about are gold longs. I don't see gold longs as being that attractive. For sure, gold will rally. prefer oil shorts. I think there would be a bit more worry on trade and risk and capital flows and overall economic growth, and that's why oil could get shaken out. So next, we'll look at if Clinton wins. Now, that's more the status quo, but it's obviously not priced in. If you're looking at betting markets, I think financial markets are a bit more comfortable that Hillary Clinton wins it, but it's no sure thing. And a lot of what matters with Clinton is how close it is and where it leaves the country going forward. But in any case, you'll have some measure of a relief rally in dollar yen. You could price that Fed hike up to, say, 90% in December if Clinton wins, and she wins comfortably, and you can get dollar yen up to 105, 106 in fairly short order on that trade. But you want to watch violence. They polled Americans, half of them are worried about violence on election night. That's overstated. It's a very low probability event, and we get some sort of widespread violence. Obviously, the trade is risk aversion if it happens, but watch for signs. That's something to keep an eye on election night. Hillary Clinton on a clear result with the Senate. That I think is best for risk, at least in the short term. You still have the specter of Hillary Clinton being indicted. These probes will go on. She's under investigation by the FBI, and that leaves some uncertainty. Trump, he may go kicking and screaming, but on the other hand, you have to watch his speech, his concession speech if he loses. If he's gracious and goes out quietly, in his own way, he will do a bit of kicking and screaming. But if it's minimal, I think it's clear. We're in the clear. I think risk trades are positive. I think the Republican leadership outside of Trump will be happy to see him lose, so they will give Clinton, they will ease off of her and the attacks and that division. I think the Republican establishment is trying to push out the fringe and Trump supporters, and so they won't feed into that, and that would be a sort of best case scenario for dollar yen and risk trades. Again, though, I mean, a very close result is in some ways the worst case scenario, with Trump a little bit ahead or with Clinton a little bit ahead, or a disputed result. But I think that the same trades hold true, where you buy yen, you sell stocks, and then watch the headlines afterwards and try to get some clarity out of it. But do not ignore those speeches. And if Trump wins, even the speech is still important. His victory speech, he may come out with the build a wall rhetoric. He may come out, we're going to tear down all these trade ideas, rebuild America. But he may also come out and say, listen, I want to work with Democrats. I want to work with Republicans. I want to get some of these things done without, stirring the pot too much. And he may want to sound presidential. So watch out for that. And that would tone down some of the fears. I mean, ultimately, he's only the president. Say that, the House or the Democrats still managed to get the Senate somehow. There's some checks and balances there. But also, there's a case where if the Republicans have the House and the Senate and he's the president, well, you can get a few things done. And Republicans will still be the check and balance because Donald Trump is not the establishment Republican. So, and they could get things done. They will spend. And we won't have this locked, divided Congress, at least for a little while. So there would be at some point at least, a dip there to buy in terms of risk trades. Between then and now, these leaks are continuing, the investigation is continuing, we're still a few days away from the election. Keep an eye on the news. Every headline matters right now. 5th of November, remember. That's a day where you may see some leaks. That's a Saturday, and it could stir up markets before they reopen after the weekend, and I think will lead to some risk aversion on Friday. Non-farm payrolls, nothing matters except the election. For the run-up to the election, some domestic news will matter in somewhere like the UK or elsewhere a little bit to the domestic currency, but the tide of markets is all about the election. And finally, remember that 50 million Americans do vote before Election Day, so in many ways it may be decided beforehand. A scandal can hit at the last second, and it might not be enough to tip Florida or Colorado. and Trump would need that, and it may just be too late. In the aftermath, I think it will settle down. You cannot bet on long-term disarray in the markets or in the public, and ultimately the trade will be to buy dollar yen. I think how low you want to let it go before you get in is a different story. I think ultimately it will resolve itself, except in some low probability scenarios. And if those happen, you deal with them. But in most cases, there will be some kicking and screaming, probably till the end of November, because you still have worries about the Fed as well and that sort of uncertainty. But eventually there's a dip to buy. And like I said, even with Trump winning, well, now you have sort of united Congress, and I think they'll spend. Even if it's Trump and they don't like him, the theme in 2017 will be deficit spending. And look at it, if Hillary wins, well, Congress still doesn't really like her, but they maybe will try to get a few things done just to push out the fringe and the Trump power in the Republican Party, and show that the old establishment can function, and that will mean more deficit spending. And either way, it should help growth in the United States in 2017. That's why I think the dollar's a buy, and that's why I especially think that stocks will be a buy at some point there. Of course, the timing is the challenge. So it's been all about America making it great again. I got my Trump hat on here. I'm not a supporter, but I do like volatility in markets, and it really would be something to see if it happens. And may you live in interesting times. And if you're a trader, you love volatility, and it could be the ultimate volatility event, and something that would last for a long, long time. So good luck trading it. We'll be covering it live, headline by headline at ForexLive. If you saw what we did during the Brexit trade, I mean, it was incredible how we guided people through it, and the comments we made. People made a lot of money on that trade, being on top and knowing when polls close and knowing what they mean, and being ready to make a decision when that market is in that moment of denial. I think these are some of the best real-time trading opportunities, period. So hope you're ready. Thanks for listening to this webinar. You're probably a lot more ready than you were a few days ago. So looking forward to election day and trading with you then. So for ForexLive, thanks a lot for watching, and see you then.